Potential military uses. It should not be hard for anyone to envisage potential military uses of the powerful psi capabilities discussed thus far. Telepathy, precognition, dowsing, remote viewing, and psychokinesis offer an endless list of possibilities. In 1984, Charles Harrington, director of the Psychophysical Research Laboratories in Princeton, said, "There is potential for military and other uses, but psi has not reached the application stage." Let's look at some specific military uses before addressing the implementation issue. Next section, intelligence. Just like Croesus in 550 BC, remote viewing and precognition can break through barriers of time and space to perhaps eliminate the word secrecy from our vocabulary. In 1976, CIA Director George Bush enthusiastically gave retired astronaut Edgar Mitchell permission to organize high-level seminars at the CIA to discuss possible intelligence applications of parapsychology. Although interest waned in 1977, when Admiral Stanfield Turner replaced Bush, it shows there are others who see definite psi applications for the intelligence community. Well, there are limitless applications for psi in the intelligence community. As mentioned earlier, 4 of the best-known U.S. parapsychology laboratories are certain that psi can be used for espionage. Those 4 labs must be known about Project Senate. In a previous section of this paper, I quoted Henry Greaves and William Dick's 1978 book, where 2 U.S. psychics described super-secret military installations and even the contents of confidential files at the installation. Ronald McCrae's 1984 book gives more details on this actual test. Psychics versus the CIA. Extrasensory perception against the most sophisticated codes known to the United States National Security Agency. Remote viewing against satellite photography and top U.S. agents behind the Iron Curtain. The whole of the United States national security apparatus cooperating to make cheating impossible. The test was dubbed Project Scanate, an impossible test with impossible results. Puthoff, Targ, and the psychics won. The whole example demonstrates some results. On impulse, Puthoff gave Price the coordinates of the latest series of targets selected by the CIA, including an area in Virginia's approximately 135 miles southwest of Washington, D.C. 3 days later, he got Prince's 5-page written response in the mail, beginning with the description of the area from an altitude of 1,500 feet and ending with a tour through the building's interiors. The tour was complete with descriptions of equipment, names, and names from desks. And just to show he was serious, a list of a dozen labelings on file folders locked in a file cabinet. 3 weeks later, the CIA informed him, Puthoff, that Price was right. Exactly right. So, incredible stuff. The other psychic, Swan, although sometimes ambiguous or off the mark, was also remarkable when he described a previously unknown Soviet installation sketching buildings and rail lines and noting an unusually high proportion of women amongst the personnel. A U.S. spy satellite verified Swan's report 3 months later. Another example involving Navy Captain Joseph L. Dick, the leader of the Defense Intelligence Agency office responsible for gathering evidence on potentially live MIAs. He used psychics and said some of their leads have checked out. They've been able to visualize aircraft crashes, and we found the wreckage where they were indicated. So remote viewing is obviously a capability well suited to the intelligence business and unobstructed by distance limitations. Exactly. You can sit down in your office or your lab or indeed your living room and conduct remote viewing on the subject matter you wish to be viewing. Simples. Remote viewing showed that the planet Jupiter had faint rings like those of its neighbor Saturn. Astronomers scoffed at this claim, and Carl Sagan called it ridiculous. 9 years later, Voyager 1 sent back pictures of the Jovian rings. Nice. In addition to remote viewing, map dowsing could be used to pinpoint locations of Soviet submarines or find underground tunnels in the Korean demilitarized zone. Personnel. Before discussing potential personnel applications of psi, let me remind you that at least 4 of the U.S. best-known parapsychology research laboratories are certain psychic powers might be used to psychically harm, sicken, or kill individuals. Their confidence is probably based on the experiments like those done in 1975 at San Francisco Medical Research Institute with psychic healer Dean Kraft. He was to try psychically to lower the blood pressure and heart rate of a laboratory rat in a plexiglass cage. The observers, however, had an opportunity to watch for 20 minutes and record the steady decrease in the rat's heart rate, all the way to 0. He mentally killed the rat without any contact. Similarly, Nina Kulagina of the Soviet Union is known for her psychokinetic abilities. After just 40 seconds of focusing her mental influences, she was able to completely stop an isolated frog's heart from a distance of about 1.5 meters. When we, Soviet Professor Grenadine Sergeyev, examined it, we found that it was torn apart as if bombarded by lightning balls of microscopic size. The energy flow can reach incredible insanity. From these examples, we can see the lethality of this type of psi. Soviet interest in these capabilities is nothing new. Targ notes. Experiments that feature induced pain or behavioral manipulation at a distance have been the distinguishing characteristics for almost all official Soviet psi research since the early 1920s. From the mid-60s until the mid-70s, the KGB beamed mysterious microwave radiation at the United States Embassy in Moscow. This bombardment did not exceed U.S. health standards, but did exceed much more rigid Soviet standards. Why are Soviet standards more rigid than ours? Why were they putting U.S. Embassy personnel at greater risk than they would be allowed to by their own personnel for no apparent reason? From a more positive view, psi can be used to monitor and even restore health from great distances. A doctor could diagnose and treat many patients via remote control, or better yet, experiments in biofeedback have shown that our minds have the ability to control much of our own physiology. When discussing the interaction of the mind and matter, Alexander said, the functions of the autonomic nervous system, previously thought to operate independently of the conscious mind, can be controlled. With training, we can develop this ability to control stress, fear, and even bleeding. Another potential area for psi use is personal training. In 1982, at Fort Hood, Texas, the Army tested a program where soldiers practiced visualizing their combat tasks to improve their human performance. An expanded contract was then initiated to train Green Berets meditation skills so they could adapt to long hours behind enemy lines. What about executive decision making and stress management? In today's analytical and statistical world, we tend to underdevelop our gut instincts. But good leaders and visionaries recognized the value of a highly sensitized intuition. Albert Einstein said the really valuable factor attributing to his theory of relativity was intuition. Targ says through psi you can learn to evaluate the reliability of your intuitive impressions. Communication. Just think of the possibilities telepathy provides in the area of communication. Direct mind-to-mind link-ups could eliminate security problems and provide direct access anywhere without equipment dependencies. Soviet researcher Paul Neumov described an experiment where a mother rabbit was placed in a laboratory with electrodes implanted in her brain to monitor activity. Her baby rabbits were taken on board a submarine, which was then submerged deep in the ocean. At synchronized times, the baby rabbits were killed, and at each precise moment, the mother rabbit's brain reacted. This innate form of communication, which traversed great distances and ocean depths, may be the source of many natural instincts. When asked in an interview about the limits of man's extended mental awareness, Targ responded, "One of the conclusions of our decade of research at SRI is that we found no bounds for psychic functioning. As physicists, we always try and look for the limits of phenomena, but what we found is that the electromagnetic shielding does not interfere with psychic functioning. We even went to the extent of having remote viewing experts conducted with the viewer submerged in a submarine under 500 feet of seawater. That greatly alters even the lowest frequency of electromagnetic waves, but we found the viewers perfectly able to do remote viewing from the submarine, just as they had done on dry land. We also found that they were to look across distances of up to thousands of miles. So from our experiments, we found that neither distance nor electromagnetic shielding interfered with psychic functioning." Bearden goes even further. He postulates that through the use of psychotronic electromagnetic scalar weapons, all forms of psychotronic communication are vulnerable. He supports an emerging theory of local general relativity, which does not assume that a local space-time is always flat, but rather allows individual conservation laws to be violated locally. There, got it. The major implication of this starting new engineering physics is that no one can engineer physics reality itself. Communication faster than light speed is possible. Electronic equipment. Many researchers are concentrating on tests of low-energy psychokinesis called micro-PK. Typically, the psychic subject tries to influence a simple mechanical or electrical system which has a sensitive thermometer or computer microchip, which can be affected by very low energy levels. Robert Yahan, Dean of the School of Engineering and Applied Science at Princeton University, says such tests have been shown consistently positive results. If a microchip and other electronic equipment can be mentally manipulated, the new high-tech information revolution has just been handed a deadly setback. Financial institutions, businesses, governments, and those dependent on computers are suddenly very vulnerable. This apparent capability has created a paranoia amongst talented psychics in the parapsychology field, perhaps with some justification. Researcher Jeffrey Mishlove believes that anyone with the ability to jam computers would probably have to be destroyed. How big of a step is it from being able to mentally stop an elevator at will to manipulating the computer systems of electronic warfare systems? Weapons. Through psychotronics, Bearden says almost every weapon system we presently have or are developing is vulnerable to scalar EM weaponry. Once again, we see existing weapons and technology possibly falling prey to a new weapons generation called psychotronics. He developed this weapons list in 1980. The following list enumerates all the probable Soviet psychotronic weapons that I am aware of: electromagnetic field cancelers, electron current cancelers, death radiator de-interceptors, free energy generators, psychotronic bombs, brain link, brain probe, disease radiator ray, emotion radiator ray, anti-submarine systems, teleporters prototype, force generators, orthoframe generators, quark anti-quark rays, distance telepathy, nuclear radiation inhibitors, mental implantations, ABM systems, mid-course and terminal, materializer shields, sweeps for nuclear debris, AAA systems, anti-satellite systems, Tesla effect weapons, earthquake generators, anti-vehicle systems, weather control systems. He and others have continued monitoring and documenting instances where they believe these weapons have been tested, theorizing and possible effects and matching them up with real-world phenomena events. Typical instances he describes includes a Tesla weapon at Sarahagen, scalar potential interferometer, nuclear flashes off the coast of Africa, the 15th of April 1979 Yugoslavian earthquake, a Tesla shield site in August 1980, a continuous Tesla fireball in Lithuania on 10th of September 1976, a continuous Tesla EMP globe in Iran, East Coast aeroballistics hyperburst registration, in 1977, and 1978, booms in Delaware in 1982, and laser blinding of US satellites in 1975. More recent instances include abnormalities during Titan launches, shuttle launches, and even associated weather anomalies. Think. The ability to manipulate the weather would allow you to literally control the fog of war. But Bearden's 1986 apocalyptic message foretells of an ultimate destructive power. He says, there is a special time bomb ticking away for all of humanity. For the first time, the total destruction of our entire biosphere and perhaps our entire solar system is only moments away from the finger of the trigger. Just how feasible are these potential military uses of psi? The feasibility of operational employment. The experiments of the 1970s should more than convince you of psi's potential military uses. But why did Charles Honorton say in 1984 that psi has not reached the application stage? Probably because to use psi capabilities operationally requires 1, the ability to control psi, that it can be done repeatedly on demand, 2, the ability to teach it and learn it, 3, the ability to practice it, gain confidence, improve our understanding, and increase reliability. And how close are we to satisfying these requirements? Which is probably the reason why Charles Horton said that psi has not reached the application stage when he said it in 1984. Controllability. Psi is frequently criticized because it is so unpredictable. Psychics are not always successful. Experiments are hard to replicate, and therefore use upon demand is unreliable. But is that reason to exclude it altogether? We see it used mainly in situations where there are no other alternatives. The Defense Department used psychics in an attempt to find General Dozier, kidnapped by the Italian Red Brigades in January 1982. All attempts were unsuccessful and unrelated to his eventual rescue. But if 100% reliability is required, then no technique used today is acceptable either. A CIA commissioned independent evaluation following Project Scanata concluded manifestations of extrasensory perception were sufficiently sharp and cleared out to justify serious considerations of possible applications. However, it cautioned that existing ignorance of the bias of paranormal phenomena, together with the capricious and unreliable nature of the channel, dictate that information derived from this source can never stand alone and must be used with caution. Who said never say never? Psi could be routinely used to complement other systems we have, and as a last resort, when and where appropriate. Remember, a 1983 Congressional Research Service report said dowsing for water, oil, and other minerals is an established practice around the world. Similarly, other professionals are using psi functioning to assist them in their business. Police seek help identifying clues and suspects in criminal investigations. Mr. Price frequently uses his talents as police commissioner of Burbank, California. Healthcare specialists utilize psi techniques for determining and improving patients' health. Companies and individual property owners use dowsing to locate water for drilling wells. But where do you find people like the Delphi Oracle or Mr. Price? Interesting question. Learnability. After years of study, Targ said, "We are certain that psychic abilities are a totally normal aspect of human awareness, and that you can learn to develop this potential sanely and rationally. Anyone who decides for himself that it is safe to exercise paranormal functioning can learn to do so. The key to learning appears to be acceptance and support rather than skepticism and criticism. Since Western society has repressed these psychic abilities, most people experiencing psis also tend to ignore their potential and usefulness. In our society, this is Western society, a person who is beginning to experience emerging psychic abilities, or who is interested in doing so, has almost nowhere to turn for guidance. They can admit their interests and risk being branded as social deviants, or they can deny their interest in psychic functioning and thereby become alienated from what might be an important aspect of their own lives and experiences. However, as people hear more about these capabilities and realize psi functioning is a normal experience, there is a greater sharing and exchange of personal experiences. People from all walks of life are attending personal awareness and assertiveness seminars to learn how to take control of their lives. Instructor Robert Robbins teaches a seminar entitled Fear into Power, the Firewalk Experience, where hundreds of people learn to walk barefoot over hot coals in a 4-hour seminar. Their whole concept is that mind and will can control the world. Norman Cousins, an adjunct professor at the UCLA School of Medicine, has written 2 books on the subject of self-healing. He is certain that the mind has the power to affect physical processes. He quotes, "In Russia, professional mineralogists and geologists are taught dowsing at Tomsk Polytechnic Institute. Similarly, the United States National Dowsing Association teaches classes at annual conferences for anyone who is interested. After using many untrained individuals in remote viewing experiments, Targ concludes, the best scientific research suggests that the capability for developing genuine psychic abilities lies latent in many or perhaps most people." In 1984, the U.S. Army initiated a 2-year study to evaluate the potential of certain unconventional methods to enhance human performance. That study recently concluded. Sleep learning, mental imaging, and accelerated learning programs are among the unconventional techniques which may improve soldier performance. However, the committee rejected the parapsychological techniques such as extrasensory perception and psychokinesis as scientifically unsupportable. Note, this study rejects psi because it is not scientifically supportable. But does it work? During Vietnam, the Marine Corps trained a platoon of dowsers to locate hidden tunnels and weapon caches in ICOPs near Hue. They were withdrawn after 5 months because the successful use of dowsing appeared to require special skills that cannot be taught to the average Marine. The commander of the Training Development Command did not discredit dowsing, but merely pointed out that it is a special skill his Marines hadn't mastered. Practice. Given that the psi can be controlled, taught, and learned, it probably requires more than a 4-hour short course to use operationally. Many skills require specialization, long-term training, and extensive practice to master. The experienced psi practitioners of today are those people who have spent years developing their individual talents. With those years of experience comes the increased confidence of how to use their talents. Like other normal skills, practice and training improve performance, understanding, and reliability. And those who have learned the most about psi are best suited to begin training a new vanguard to carry on and improving their skills. But the hostile environment of the Western society, the history of psi has been one of independent research and independent findings, held closely to prevent the scorn of organized science and society. Consequently, we continue to lose the knowledge and experience of past masters, rather than building on their understanding to improve our own understanding. The one historical thread of commonality is a belief that psi exists and can offer much more for the future of mankind. In 1983, Targ said that our understanding has reached the point where we can seriously consider transferring the remote viewing technology from laboratory research to real-world applications. Are we ready? Operational availability. There are 3 avenues that parapsychologists have long since recognized as a possible route to general acceptance of psi. 1. Through experiments which produce psi upon demand in laboratories, so skeptics are convinced that all conditions are correctly controlled. 2. Through mainstream science acceptance of new theories which explain psi phenomena. 3. Through finding practical applications that work regardless of our own limited understanding. Researchers have traditionally tried to use method 1 to convince the scientific community, but prevailing concepts reign supreme. Method 2 is also directly dependent on scientific community and is very unlikely given limited understanding of psi today. That is why psi practitioners and many researchers have gone to method 3 in the 1980s. Through practical application, they can develop their skills, leaving prevailing concepts behind, along with the scientific community. Many researchers point out how the scientific community was the last to accept hypnotism, so to researchers feel psi will again become accepted in society long before the scientific community comes to grips with it. Operational use of psi is up to the user. King Croesus was content after one test to use the Delphi Oracle. World-famous psychic Edgar Casey advised General John Pershing and accompanied him on European missions. Even General Patton used the psi talents of a water dowser while in North Africa. More recently, according to Barbara Holliger, who worked 3 years in the White House Office of Policy Development for the Reagan administration, said parapsychology played a major role in one of the administration's most controversial defensive decisions, abandoning the Carter administration's shell game deployment of the MX missile. In other words, US studies showed Soviet psychics could beat the shell game and pinpoint the missiles. These examples show how operational use depends equally on someone taking the risk to try unorthodox techniques. Congressman Charles Rose, DNC, is a respected long-term congressman and member of the House Select Committee on Intelligence. He takes psychic weapons seriously, but in 1984 didn't think we had the technology to build them. The congressman's personal experience has convinced him such breakthroughs are on the horizon. He has attended classified demonstrations of remote viewing arranged by the CIA. Says Rose, I've seen some incredible examples of remote viewing, so much so that I think we ought to pay close attention to the developments in this field, and especially to what the Soviets are doing. If they develop a capacity to have people mentally view secret centers within this country, we could come to the point where we didn't have any secrets. Well, very logical. Bearden thinks those breakthroughs have occurred. Yeah, he's right. He has documented evidence that the Soviets are beyond the speculation and research stages, and have deployed psi-weapon systems ready to strike. With the threat so near, why are we so unprepared? Self-imposed obstacles. Despite extensive evidence of psi and its tremendous potential use as an instrument of power, we continue to impede our own progress. Our mindsets, extreme secrecy, and disjointed research fuel skepticism and criticism rather than seeking truth. Mindset. The history of psi in Western society is filled with distinguished scientists from diverse fields who became malaligned and professionally ridiculed for their psychic research. People feared that science would undermine traditional religious beliefs. Even electricity was considered to be an occult and mystical force in the 1850s. Robert Hare, a major American chemist, Alfred Russel Wallace, the co-founder with Darwin of the theory of evolution by natural selection, and Sir William Crookes, the chemist and physicist who discovered thallium and invented the radiometer, were the first of a continual succession of eminent scientists who endorsed paranormal claims based on their own research. Even today, the 130 years of controversy over psychological or psychical research is impeding progress. Robert Johan, professor of aerospace science and dean of the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences at Princeton, related one experience. I confess that I discussed parapsychology research with some trepidation, born of previous unpleasant experiences. For example, a lighthearted article in the Princeton Alumni magazine in which I attempted to share some of my experiences in this field with the university community at large brought an intensity and breadth of reactions for which I was totally unprepared, ranging from irresponsible and categorically condemnation on one extreme to equally irrational messianic accolades on the other. Rather than precipitating further such distracting outbursts, I have largely avoided opportunities for public presentation. As long as the scientific community continues to challenge the existence of psi, experts to improve our understanding of it are unlimited. Few Soviet-style experiments are done in this country because it is difficult to attain funding to explore the mechanism of psi, which its very existence is politically controversial in the scientific community. This mindset is best described by one eminent physicist who reads SRI reports on the year remote viewing research. This is something I won't believe, even if it turns out to be true. Even author Ronald McRae, after his investigation into government science research, is plagued with the Western culture mindset. Personally, I cannot accept the reality of remote viewing. Berian says, even when Western scientists are confronted with the actual Soviet test of the psychotronic weapons directly over their heads, they do not recognize the weaponry nor the nature of the effects produced. How can this kind of atmosphere promote the search for truth? It won't. It retards it. In 1977, a group of prominent self-appointed people such as Carl Sagan and astrophysicist Dennis Rawlings formed the Committee for Scientific Investigations of Claims of the Paranormal, CSICOP, to refute all claims of paranormal events. This committee was later rebuked by Rawlings himself, a co-founder of the committee, because of the integrity of some of those who made a career of opposing anomaly research. He said, I now believe that if a flying saucer landed in the backyard of a leading anti-UFO spokesman, he might hide the incident from the public, for the public's own good, of course. He might swiftly convince himself that the landing was a hoax, a delusion, or an unfortunate or mundane phenomenon which could be explained away with further research. This mentality is even more disturbing when we see the debilitating effects it can have. Case in point, a February 1987 article in Omni states, in this one strange incident, CSICOP official Philip J. Klass, learning of a forum on anomalies research that the University of Nebraska was sponsoring, called the school to protest that CSICOP's views were not being represented, and that, moreover, in questioning the United States government's word on the non-existence of UFOs, speakers at the conference were seeking what the Soviet Union does to convey to the public that our government cannot be trusted, that it lies, that it falsifies. As a patriotic American, I very much resent this. After classes threatened legal action against the university, it canceled its relationship of future conferences of this kind. Class withdrew the threat and pronounced himself satisfied with the university's action. Since then, satellite groups of debunkers have proliferated all around the country, determined to do battle with the pseudoscience, real and imagined. Not content simply to argue the issues on their merits, they have harassed colleagues in universities into dropping, usually non-credit, courses in parapsychology, conduct virtuous campaigns against anomaly proponents, and done, in the words of Philadelphian Drew Endicott, one of their number. Anything short of criminal activity to get the point across to people who have no demonstrative faculty to reason. Given this obstacle, which may in the scientific community create, the military is confronted with a similar situation, both personal and professional. Can the military risk association with the scorned psychic community? Can a military officer? I stated earlier that operationally that I stated earlier that operational use of psi is equally dependent on the user as well as the psychic. What is the military mindset when dealing with parapsychology? I began this research because I was concerned the military establishment was unaware of the psi potential's applications, not taking Lieutenant Colonel Alexander's message seriously. As my research indicates, the government, or at least some individuals, were well ahead of me. They have been involved, daring to try unorthodox techniques in helping demonstrate the existence of psi by using it when all else fails. But the military and government is a reflection of its society, so the controversy existing is also there. Congressman Rose thinks skeptics in the Pentagon and the CIA are hindering U.S. research in remote viewing and wonders openly about their motives. Some of the intelligence people I've talked to know that remote viewing works, although they still block further research on it, since they claim it's not yet as accurate as satellite photography. But it seems to me that it would be a hell of a cheaper radar system. And if the Russians have it and we don't, we are in serious trouble. This country wasn't afraid to look into the strange physics behind lasers and semiconductors, and I don't think it should be afraid to look into this. Really dry. Samuel Kozlov, the Assistant Secretary of the Navy, who tried unsuccessfully to eliminate psychic research, dislikes even the mention of so-called psychic weapons. Navy research in the mid-70s determined that psychics could detect remote electromagnetic sources, indicating perhaps that they could also detect submerged submarines. That would be useful. The Navy also sponsored research to see if psychics could influence the magnetometers used to detect the magnetism of submerged substances. Dr. Joel Lawson, once head of the Naval Electronic Systems Command, said, "I have always believed that ESP is the only way to fight submarines. The magnetometer tests were designed to prove the principles." Once willing to discuss psychic warfare openly, now he has been officially silenced. My own research experience demonstrates leaders at all levels do not have the basic understanding of psychic weapons systems. I questioned many general officers on the subject of parapsychology, and only one of them was even aware of what I was referring to. That one senior officer said, "If you are interested in that, you'll need to have your head examined." Wow. He refused to even discuss which service or organization I could contact for more information. The total non-familiarity of senior officers I questioned and similar indications from my Air War College classmates is a poor response to Alexander's 1980 message. It truly is. Further, the hostile response I received from the other one general who had some familiarity indicated either a closed mind or stay away attitude. You can imagine my surprise when I later found his name was in a 1984 Washington Post article as one Pentagon general who was impressed with some of the psi results and concerned about the Soviets' lead in the psychic research. So I take it he meant stay away. Incredible. Continuing. Extreme secrecy. Through additional research, I was surprised to discover the 1982 War College research paper presented the most significant contribution award as it was this same topic. An unclassified paper, later upgraded to classified and then completely withdrawn. Contacts with the intelligence community for information brought back a resounding no, regardless of clearance or willingness to make this research effort classified. Discussions with previous DoD psi proponents warned it might be all right to do research in this academic situation, but forget it afterwards, or it could be unhealthy for your career. From this study and these experiences, I will assume the government is pursuing psi research. I'm convinced psi has tremendous human military applications, which can be used operationally. I'm also convinced that relatively few military leaders at this level are aware of the threat, but most of my original questions remain unanswered. How much research, how well coordinated, how well funded, what priority in implementing funding cuts? In addition, I developed some new concerns. I expected to learn the truth about military applications of psi in current research. So, I could help identify impacts within my area of specialization, computers and space systems. Instead, I only confirmed Alexander's warning and found that super secrecy in this area is shrouding the truth, promoting skepticism within society and the military, confining military strategic thinking, and ultimately may be more harmful. I, like Congressman Rose, have to wonder the motive. I felt like an investigative reporter in my own backyard. When talking about the electronic warfare EW area, experts emphasize how in the past our services treated EW as a black art far too long. The result was improper resource allocation, which left us with our pants down. I contend psi research has been locked on the same course with significantly greater risks. Many senior leaders have been quick to point out that intelligence is too important to leave to the intelligence community. I would add, psi capabilities are too important to leave to the intelligence community. Marcello Trizzi goes one step further. Psi is too important to become the exclusive property of governments, either at home or abroad, who might become interested in exploiting these abilities for their own purpose. Discussions with classmates on this subject demonstrated a reflection of the Western society's mindset. Most of the highly technical scientific community didn't even want to discuss it. They may laugh too hard, or if there were any possibilities of psychotronics, then the entire scientific community would be jumping at it. Others were caught off guard by its possible reality. And the few who were not surprised, mainly intelligence backgrounds, knew something about it, but had no idea if it were still actively pursued by psi applications, or if they were actually pursuing these psychic applications. So there's no focal point. The establishment has apparently gone underground and is using titles other than psi, ESP or parapsychology, to contract out research. Target fields, reliable, undistorted scientific information about psychic functioning must be made more easily available and identifiable. McRae suggests it is fear of ridicule that makes DoD so sensitive on this subject. Any CIA report mentioning psi is automatically classified top secret or higher. He also suggested that parapsychologists not spending a significant proportion of their effort on military-related research. Right, okay. The failures of the psychic warfare projects in military laboratories, the record shows, have often been among the most irresponsible experiments ever reported. The scenes with dead Soviet agents, the multispectral image analyzer that supposedly detects submarines with a photo, the hyperspatial nuclear howitzer, and the anti-missile time warp over the North Pole, to review only a few. His book, Mind Wars, gives an excellent introduction to the broad range of government projects attempted, and what's ridiculous to one may not seem so ridiculous to another. In response, I would suggest he is burning the wheat. Those examples used in this paper, with the chaff. Opponents of psi research use the failures to adjust abandonment. But Professor Johan says the failures merely underscore the difficulty of the task, not in justifying its abandonment. Historical examples abound of far more frustrating and costly routes to ultimately attain the ultimate attainment of difficult scientific and engineering aspirations, e.g., transmutation of the elements and manned aerospace flight, to name but a few. Exactly. It is worth the effort and the resources to be conducting a psychic warfare program. The less focused the initiatives, the slower the progress, and the smaller the knowledge base. The less information, the more destructive misinformation. Targ says, reliable, publicly available information about psi research can help protect us all from the damaging effects of misinformation. Recommendations. 7 years after Alexander's article appeared in the Military Review, I can only concur with his message, and more so, the implications of a distant U.S. second place in the parapsychology mind race with the Soviet Union are unthinkable total vulnerability. Yeah, he's correct. Yet, this appears to be a real possibility. Remember, he's back in 1988 saying this. We are no better or stronger than our weakest link, and our total dependence on high-tech, sophisticated electronic weapon systems may become our Achilles heel. Continued coordinated research is imperative for rapid advancement. Smart leaders at all levels are essential for necessary resource support, strategic thinking, and acceptance of the threat potential we might soon encounter. Targ would argue that the mind race should not be seen as a psychic competition between nations. Rather, it is a race to develop our own innate potential for extended awareness. Well, I can agree with this in theory. I agree even more with Marcello Truzzi when he says, our government has a responsibility to achieve security and military parity, if not superiority, in relation to our potential enemies. Thus, even if the probabilities for psi research producing anything practical or small, it would be negligence for our guardians in government to ignore such matters, especially when others are pursuing such avenues. Long shots have paid off in the past. Atomic energy was once a wild idea. Opponents to psi research today are similar to the late Admiral William Leahy, Chief of U.S. Naval Operations from 1937 to 1939. He said, the A-bomb is the biggest fool thing we've ever done. The bomb will never go off, and I speak as an expert on explosives. To accomplish these objectives means 1. Opening the super secret door to allow broader classified knowledge of psi's true capabilities, where we are and where we are going. 2. Focusing military exploration resources and start targeting capabilities, defenses like we did for the strategic defense initiatives. 3. Doing strategic thinking on a totally new type of warfare, psychic warfare. Opening super secret door is necessary to begin acclimating the military community to psi's true capabilities. It is past time for bringing psi into the open, where everyone can benefit from a realistic awareness of it. Otherwise, how do we expect people to accept and use psi capabilities? Let's learn from our personal experiences with computers. We are still trying to get leaders accustomed to hands-on computer systems. Changing attitudes takes time. The sooner we begin using psi to complement other systems, the sooner we will build a reliable psi force and gain management's confidence. Targ said, we believe The question of size usefulness and importance may be settled in the next decade. Settling this question will not require another century. It will probably be settled in the marketplace and in the everyday lives of millions of people, and not, alas, in corridors of Cambridge. The military community needs to be poised on this leading edge, lest it fall behind the society it swore to protect. Focusing resources and targeting capabilities is the cornerstone to knowing the true picture. Otherwise, who has the stick? Who really knows where we are and what it will take to get us to where we need to be? How else can we present accurate, reliable information to senior leadership for prioritizing resources? Targ notes that the popular view of our relationship to space and time is inadequate. One possible conclusion is that there is something incomplete about our understanding of the space-time continuum in which we exist. This is Bearden's position also. So the military needs to force the scientific community to open their eyes and minds to better understand paranormal events and the new physical principles which explain them. Renowned Soviet physicist and Nobelian P. Kapista, informed Soviet leader Khrushchev that if a means of total neutralization of the foreign missiles was to be found, it could only come from a group of new principles in physics, which was called energetics. The term energetics was contracted from psychoenergetics and is essentially the expanded physics electromagnetics that Bearden has dubbed scalar electromagnetics. The military needs to find young blood in the scientific community who don't know all the reasons why something can't be done. Agreed. They are the ones with fresh minds to evaluate Bearden's evolving concepts of scalar electromagnetics and to find new physical principles explaining psychic phenomena. August Stern is one person in the West who actually worked in top-secret Soviet military laboratories searching for a physical key to psychic phenomena. He warns, the Soviets will emerge with a completely new view of man, not of muscle and bone, but of quantum physics, magnetism, and electromagnetic waves. When that day comes, he asserts, they won't need to scour the countryside for psychics. They'll just build machines for manipulation of the mind. He goes on to remind us, but remember how surprised you were when they launched Sputnik. You better be prepared. Strategic thinking is essential to preparing a solid foundation for the totally new type of warfare. The Air War College should incorporate this subject in its curriculum and present it and other futuristic technologies early in the overall curriculum. Knowledge of history must be combined with knowledge of future weapon systems, space technology, directed energy, and psi weapons, etc. To most effectively study war, challenge current leaders, and prepare future warriors. This is the place and the time to stimulate military visionaries. In the words of Edgar Allan Poe, those who dream by day are cognizant of many things which escape those who dream only by night. In addition, speakers such as Bearden, Alexander, and others should be invited to a forum similar to the Aerospace Power Symposium, where the issues are put on the table, controversies explained, and the students really understand the weapons and threats they may soon employ or confront. Conclusion. Man's greatest potential remains a prisoner of man. Exploring the mind frontier is essential to unlock our innate capabilities and the key to successful exploration is a greater psychic awareness. The mind is rich in unfathomed resources, ripe for exploration, a limitless source of treasures for advancing all mankind, and a serious threat to those who ignore its potential. We must overcome our psychic inhibitions, stop denying the existence of paranormal events, and start trying to understand the nature of these events. Alexander's message is still valid and needs repeating. We are at risk. We need to open the security doors and open the minds to educate all levels within the military community. We need a well-coordinated, ongoing military exploration of psi. Since the basic electronic components which form the foundation of our weapon systems appear to be vulnerable, we need psi strategic thinking to chart the course of entering this entirely new battlefield dimension. In the words of James Thurber, let us not look back in anger, nor forward in fear, but around in awareness. And this concludes the reading of Psychic Warfare, Exploring the Mind Frontier by Lieutenant Colonel McKelvy, United States Air Force. There are, so as we're doing these videos, we should do it for some benefit. So the benefit for this video is to power the Curse Brawn curse. Hashtag Curse Brawn. Why are we doing this? We're doing this because Taylor is totally gorgeous, totally delicate, and we're Taylor super fans. Hashtag Curse Brawn. We hope you've enjoyed this presentation. The link to this document is in the description below, and indeed you'll find a link to this document here. And I'm St. Nicholas, and bye for now.